Coach Lilly, obviously you guys have, in theory, a big game, Class AA number one versus Class AAA number one, kind of games that you always want to play in. First thing I want to ask, because I've been hearing it over on the Princeton side too, there's a lot of questions about the availability of Silas on Friday night. You have any comment, or what might be happening there? Is he going to play?
Well, I don't know. What's Princeton spies say? I don't know what
they
got their spies out trying to figure out what we're doing.
I keep getting the question, is he going to play? And I hadn't heard anything specific of it, so I wanted to see if you had.
Well, there's a piece of me that doesn't want to say anything because, it'll definitely change their game plan. But, so I don't know. We'll see.
Again, you guys had a really physical game. Any other injuries that, I know you don't want to give away too much, but anything you want to disclose or,
No.
Obviously when you come into this one, you talked about it, the way the games were sequenced was always going to be pretty difficult for you. Barnesville, pretty physical. You knew coming in that was going to be a tough game, and then you have this one to follow it up with. Talk to me about kind of getting through this stretch, because this is similar to what you face in the playoff atmosphere, semifinals, championship. There's two really good teams back to back.
Well, yeah, I tell you, it's a different challenge for us this year than in years past. If we had the 2022 schedule, I probably wouldn't lose too much sleep over it. But we have to learn how to play up, and that takes a minute in the aspect of developing depth, and there's other schools that's had to do it, so no use crying over it. But when you got to play Hoover, who's twice the size of us, and then you got to play Martins Ferry, then you got to play Bluefield, then you got to play Barnesville, who's number one in the OVAC. You're going to get people banged up, so you got to rely on your number two guys, and so far they've done a very good job. So but we've got to get used to that, and it's a new challenge for us in our program, and we're working hard to do that. And like I said, so far the kids have done really well with it, but it's going to be very important down the stretch as we get closer to the playoffs, that we develop more depth.
How do you start with breaking down their offense? I mean, they have a very experienced quarterback that's thrown for a ton of touchdowns. They have arguably the best player in the state and wide receiver Brad Mosser. They have a big offensive line. When you crack the tape on, what's the first thing that gives you a headache?
Well, I think the diversity of what they're doing is a little bit more challenging this year than it was last year. Last year they were leaving people in spots, and then when you leave people in spots, you can use your chess piece and do some things. But now they move Mosser around a little bit, and it's hard to BB in on him. And I think people are having a hard time BBing in on him. They're very challenging. I tell you, I like Barker. I think he does a great job. Chance is a good kid. They got a lot of new pieces that's helped them a little bit. So no one's really stopped them. They've stopped themselves at times, but no one's really stopped them. I think they've only lost one game in 2 years now, and I think maybe only 2 games in 3 years. So it's a huge challenge for us, and we understand that. But we're playing up, and this is an opportunity for us to get better. So the thing is, it depends how you want to look at it in the aspect that are we getting ourselves ready to play in the playoffs? And if we would have played a team that was 0-8 or 1-7 or something like that, is that really getting us ready? Now next year when we're a young team, the answer will be different, but we're a veteran team. So we want to be able to go into playoffs and say, okay, we've seen everything and been in every environment. I doubt very seriously we'll be in any environment in AA that we're going to be in Friday night. So, it's just a lot of different lessons to be learned there.
Gotcha. And then defensively on the opposite side, you're pretty familiar with Caleb Kaiser and what he's done. They started the year, they moved him kind of off ball to linebacker, but when he came back Friday night from injury, he was more so along that line. Now, you guys, you played against him last year. You played against 2 really good defensive ends when they had him and Jennings both. How do you kind of attack that defense? Because it's one of the things, and you have a guy like that yourself in Conley. But one of the first things you want to spot on offense is, okay, where's this guy lining up? We need to make sure that he's not wrecking our play.
Well, I think sometimes you can spend so much time worrying about where one guy's at that you let the other 10 beat you. So, I think he's better coming off the edge than playing linebacker. I think that's probably where he needs to be for now. Size-wise, when he goes to college, he'll have to be a linebacker. But for now, he's hard to handle off the edge. And we got two pretty good tackles. So to me, they just got to step up to the challenge. It's not like, do you want to rub people and all this other stuff? We got a 6'4", 280-pound sophomore tackle who we think is going to be special. We got a guy that was first team All-State on the other side, and so to me, it's just step up. It's not. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where you got to worry where he's at. It's just those guys have to man up and step up.
They're a very blitz heavy defense. I'm kind of going back and charting some of their tendencies a little bit, but I think in the Capital game they were like over 80% of their defensive plays were blitzes, and they've pretty much carried that. They've kind of made that a bit of their identity. As an offense, how do you kind of address that? Because they'll blitz their backers, but they're also you'll see some slot blitzes where they'll replace it with the safety. So they bring pressure from different spots.
Well, I don't think they're doing anything any different than they did last year. I just think they're doing it better, if that makes sense. And I think they're better on the back end. So, like, when they blitz, they're real comfortable in being cover zero. And so you got to just try to find a way to make them uncomfortable in cover zero. And like I said, it's a huge change. To me, they're top 2 AAA team in the state. And it'll be a challenge for us to see how we match up and how we do and where our program is. And we already know where their program is. And here's the bottom line. They're in their window. All right, so we'll see what they do with their window.
Now, it was probably almost 2 months ago at this point, but you played Hoover, and they're pretty different. They both have skill players that are dynamic after the catch with the ball in their hands. I'd say Princeton's line is pretty much better, but the quarterback's pretty mobile. Is there anything you feel like you can kind of take away from that? Because after the Bluefield game, one thing you talked about is we give up big plays. We're not built that way. But once you get us into to the red zone, once you get us into a box, we feel a little bit better. So what do you feel like you can kind of take away from those 2 games where the skill players are pretty dynamic and apply to this one?
Well, it'd probably be very similar in how we do things. I'm not sure their line's better than Hoover's line. They're bigger than Hoover's line. Hoover's line's a little different. They're quick. They're hard to block. And Princeton's line's big, and if they get their hands on you, you ain't getting by them. So two different lines. They're just 2 different styles of line, and we have to adapt to that somehow, some way. But there lies the challenge, and we'll just see how we do.
Gotcha. Thank you, Coach.